In the great halls of the Galactic Council, explorers from many races gathered around a glowing star map. The map stretched across the chamber, covering every known system, every cluster, every nebula. But no matter how far the lines went, no matter how many centuries of travel were recorded, one truth never changed. The map always ended at the same place, at the border of human space, and none dared to ask why. The Kelnari, a species known for curiosity, were the first to break the silence. Their leader, Captain Vorak, raised his long finger toward the empty black region on the map. "Why," he asked, "does every star chart stop here, as if the galaxy itself refuses to draw the line further?" His words echoed across the chamber. Many avoided his gaze. Some pretended to study their consoles, others whispered quietly to their neighbors. It was a question that had been asked before but never answered, for beyond human space, there was only silence. The archives told nothing, records simply ended. Trade routes, migration paths, and even pirate tracks all cut off like a knife edge. No story, no evidence, no clue remained. It was as if the galaxy itself erased everything that lay beyond. The elder species, the Zothari, shook their heads. Their spokesperson spoke slowly. "You must not ask such things, Captain. It is not safe." Vorak's eyes narrowed. Not safe to ask a question. Not safe to know the truth. The council chamber grew cold with tension. Finally, one younger race, the Thrin, dared to speak. "They say the humans hide something. They say once an entire fleet vanished when it crossed the border. They say not even wreckage was found." Fear rippled through the chamber. The words were spoken, but none wanted to believe them. Vorak, however, could not let it go. He returned to his ship that night and gathered his crew. They were bold explorers, eager for fame, hungry for discovery, he told them. "We will go where no one dares to go. We will cross into human space and see with our own eyes." The crew murmured with excitement and fear. Some hesitated, remembering old rumors. But the promise of history was stronger than the shadow of fear. Their vessel, the Starseeker, left the galactic lanes and drifted toward the black frontier. The journey took weeks. Along the way, they passed abandoned beacons and silent relay stations, each one cut off long ago, each one lifeless. The closer they drew, the quieter space became. Signals faded, star charts blurred, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Vorak stood at the observation deck. The stars beyond human space glimmered faintly, untouched, uncharted. "Look at it," he whispered. "It is waiting for us." His second officer frowned. "Captain, perhaps the stories are true. Perhaps there is a reason the maps end." Vorak turned sharply. "Every border we have ever known was crossed once. Someone must be the first. Why should we fear shadows?" But shadows were already moving. The ship's instruments began to flicker. Navigational systems struggled to read the stars. Strange distortions rippled across the void. The crew exchanged nervous glances. "Captain, sensors show interference," the technician said, "but there is nothing around us to cause it." Vorak clenched his jaw. "Keep going." Hours turned to days. The deeper they went, the stranger space became. Time itself seemed to stretch. Voices on the comms carried echoes, as if the galaxy itself was listening. One by one, the crew began to whisper their doubts. "Maybe the maps end because they must," one said. "Maybe we are not meant to cross," another muttered. But Vorak silenced them. The truth is never found by turning back. It is found by walking forward into the dark. At last, the ship reached a point where all known navigation dead. The charts went blank. Before them stretched the unknown, a vast expanse of stars unrecorded by any alien hand. The crew gasped at the sight. It was beautiful, endless, and terrifying. Then the instruments began to fail. Lights flickered across the control room. The navigator shouted, "Captain, the systems are not responding. Our readings are being scrambled." Vorak gripped the rail, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead, and then, from the silence, a faint signal broke through. It was not alien. It was not random. It was human. The message was simple. 4 words, repeated again and again. "Turn back. Do not enter." The crew stared in horror. The warning was not shouted, not angry, not loud. It was calm, patient, final. and with every repetition the ship's lights dimmed further, as if something was reaching through the void, reminding them that this border was not meant to be crossed. Vorak's heart raced. He wanted to press forward to see what lay beyond, but his crew looked to him with pale faces. They had seen enough. They had felt the silence. They knew the truth. The maps did not end because no one drew further. They ended because humans commanded them to end, and no one dared to ask why. The crew of the Starseeker drifted in uneasy silence. The human signal still pulsed in the background, calm and unshaken. Turn back. Do not enter. It played again and again, as if the void itself whispered the warning. But Captain Vorak's eyes burned with defiance. He was not a creature who feared shadows. He was a creature who sought truth, even if it meant destruction. Cut the signal, he ordered. The technician tried, but every attempt failed. The message is not coming from one source, Captain. It is everywhere. It is inside our systems. It is inside our comms. The crew trembled. It was as if the humans were not speaking through a beacon, but through space itself. Vorak gripped the command rail, his voice steady. We came for answers. We will not return empty-handed. Bring the ship deeper into human space. Gasps filled the control deck. One officer cried out, Captain, this is madness. If they erased fleets before, what chance do we have? But Vorak's glare silenced him. We are not here to fight. We are here to witness. The ship crawled forward, each engine burned weaker than the last. Instruments died one by one, charts went blank. Even the stars outside began to flicker strangely, as if reality bent in resistance. One crew member whispered, This is not space. This is a graveyard. Then they saw it. Drifting in the void ahead was a vast wreck, larger than any ship they had ever known. Its hull was torn, its surface scorched, its markings alien, but not human. It belonged to a species long vanished. The Thalkor, a warlike empire said to have challenged humanity eons ago. The crew gasped as the dead ship rotated slowly, exposing holes melted by unimaginable firepower. The historian aboard, a quiet scholar named Relin, leaned forward. This ship is not recorded in any archive. This battle is not remembered in any history. His voice trembled. The humans erased them, not only their fleet, but their memory. The silence thickened, as if the galaxy itself did not want this truth spoken aloud. Suddenly the wreck shuddered. The Starseeker's sensors came alive with static. From the shadows around the ruined ship, smaller fragments began to glow faintly. They were not debris, they were drones, thousands of them, their lights awakening as the explorers entered. They are watching us, whispered the navigator. The drones did not attack. They simply formed a silent wall around the alien wreck, surrounding the Starseeker like hunters circling prey. And then from nowhere, a second message appeared on every screen. You were warned. Fear ripped through the crew. Some shouted to retreat, others froze in terror. But Vorak stood tall, his voice steel. They have not destroyed us yet. That means they want us to see something. He ordered the ship closer to the wreck. Relin protested. Captain, you are leading us into the jaws of death. Vorak's reply was cold. Then let death tell us its secrets. Vorak's reply was cold. Then let death tell us its secrets. The Starseeker moved between the drones. The wreck loomed larger until it blocked the starlight. Its broken hull was covered with strange burns, marks not made by plasma, not by railguns, but by something older, deeper, more terrifying. Relin's voice cracked. These are not battle scars. These are erasures, as if the ship itself was rewritten by force. The crew's fear reached breaking point. One officer pulled his sidearm, shouting, We must turn back now. But before he could fire, the ship's systems flared to life on their own. Every console lit up with a single image, a face, human, calm, expressionless. It looked directly at them, though it was only light on a screen, and it spoke, You do not belong here. The voice was not loud, not cruel. It was steady, unshakable. It carried weight beyond empires. It was a voice that spoke like law. The crew froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. The human face faded, leaving only silence again. But now the warning had changed. No longer did the signal say, turn back. Now it said, final chance. Vorak's fists clenched, his heart thundered. He had wanted mystery, but now he felt the gravity of his choice. One more step forward, and they would no longer be explorers. They would be trespassers, And in human space, trespassers did not return. The crew of the Starseeker no longer spoke loudly. Every word was whispered, as if the void itself could hear them. The warning signal had changed, repeating only two words again and again. Final chance. Captain Vorak paced the deck, his steps echoing against the silence of his terrified crew. Each of them felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing against their skin. The drones outside still drifted in formation, unmoving, glowing faintly like candles guarding a tomb, and the wreck of the ancient Thalkor vessel floats in it like a monument of failure. Relan, the historian, studied the hull through the viewports. These marks, these erasures, they are not weapons of war. They are something else, something meant to erase memory itself. He turned, his voice trembling. Captain, do you not see? The humans are not only protecting their border, they are protecting their secret, a secret they buried along with entire civilizations. The crew muttered nervously. One officer whispered, if the humans could erase the Thalkor, what else have they erased? Another added, what if our people too have forgotten battles that once happened? What if even our own history is incomplete? Fear spread through them like fire. They realized that the borders of human space were not drawn by maps but by silence itself. Vorak's eyes hardened. History belongs to those who are bold enough to uncover it, he declared, and I will not let silence keep us blind. But his words carried little comfort now. Even his own voice seemed small against the vast stillness outside. Hours passed in dreadful waiting. The drones remained still, but the ship's systems flickered with strange echoes. Voices whispered through the comms, broken, distorted, in languages unknown. Sometimes they heard screams, sometimes prayers, sometimes only static. The crew grew restless, their nerves unraveling. One technician cried out, "We should have never come. This is not discovery. This is a grave we are digging for ourselves." And then something changed. Without warning, the wreck ahead glowed with a faint red light. The ruined vessel's broken panels shifted, opening like a mouth long sealed. A dark corridor yawned inside, inviting or perhaps luring them closer. The ship's thrusters activated on their own, pulling the Starseeker toward it. The crew panicked. "We are being dragged. The controls are not responding," the navigator shun. Outed, Vorak stood frozen, his face pale yet determined. "Perhaps this is the truth they want us to see," he whispered. As they drew closer, the historian Relan's console lit up. Files appeared, fragments of data, images, and words from archives long lost. The files spoke of something called the Silent War, a war never recorded in galactic history, a war fought not with weapons but with erasure. The images showed alien fleets, countless and mighty, gathering against Earth, and then nothing. Every record ended in blankness, every battle ended in silence. Relan's hands shook as he whispered, "This is not war. This is annihilation without memory. The humans did not defeat their enemies. They unmade them." The crew recoiled. They stared at the fragments with horror. To fight and lose was one thing. To fight and be forgotten was another. What kind of power could strip entire species not only of life, but of remembrance? Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered again. The human face returned on every screen, calm, cold, and timeless. But this time the eyes seemed sharper, piercing straight into each soul aboard. It spoke only once. "You were warned, yet you listened to whispers that were never yours. Now you will see what silence means." The drones outside shifted, moving into a perfect sphere around the Starseeker. The crew held their breath. For the first time, Vorak felt fear clawing at his defiance. His heart raced as he realized the truth. They had not found a secret. The secret had found them. The Starseeker was no longer moving by choice. Invisible forces pulled it deeper into the shattered husk of the Thalkor warship. The crew clung to their stations, their hearts pounding as the dead vessel swallowed them whole. Dark corridors stretched around them like the ribs of some ancient beast. The walls still burned with scars from forgotten fire. Relan whispered, "We are inside a grave of history." But even he knew graves were meant to stay sealed. Then, without warning, the wreck released them. The Starseeker floated into a vast hollow void. an inner chamber the size of a small moon, and there, hidden in darkness, something stirred. Dozens of shapes emerged, cold and silent. At first the crew thought they were debris, but then the lights flickered across their hulls, and the truth sent a wave of terror through the explorers. They were ships, not alien, not Thalcor, human. Silent titans of war glided forward, their surfaces blacker than the void itself. No signals came from them, no energy detected. Yet they moved with purpose. Their presence alone pressed against the mind like an invisible weight. The drones outside fell into perfect formation, bowing almost, as if these ships were their masters. The crew stared in horror. One officer whispered, "These are not ships, these are executioners." Another gasped, "But there are no records, no fleets of this size in human archives." Rellen's voice shook, "Because humans never intended for us to remember they existed." The largest vessel drifted closer, its shadow eclipsing their entire view. Its hull bore no markings, no name, no sign of origin. It was faceless, nameless, like the silence itself given shape. And then, a single light blinked on its surface. One eye opening, the comms exploded with sound. But it was not static, not words. It was memory. Each crew member heard voices not their own, saw visions not from their lives, worlds burning, fleets vanishing, stars blacking out, a war without screams, only silence swallowing everything. The historian clutched his head, tears running down his face. This is the silent war. They are showing us what they did. They are showing us why the maps end. The images grew sharper, alien commanders begging for mercy, human fleets surrounding them without a sound, and then nothing. Not victory, not surrender, only disappearance. The crew staggered under the weight of it. They realized the truth. Humans had erased entire empires from existence. The Thalcor were not the first, they were only one of many. Then the human face returned on their screens, but this time it was no mere projection. It was vast, endless, eyes like collapsing stars, and it spoke, not in words, but in law. You stand where silence was made, you stand where arrogance ended, turn back or join the forgotten. Vorak trembled, his defiance cracking for the first time. His crew clung to their seats, their courage breaking under the weight of the human presence, but still he forced himself to stand tall. We came for truth, now we see it, but if you erase history, if you erase memory, then what is left of the galaxy? For the first time, the human face shifted, not anger, not threat, but something colder, indifference, and then, like a whisper through eternity, the answer came, what remains is obedience. The fleet around them began to stir. Weapons the size of mountains unfolded slowly. Though they did not fire, their presence alone was enough. One pulse, and the Starseeker would vanish into the same silence that claimed the Thalcor. The crew begged their captain Vorak, "Turn us back. This is not discovery. This is doom." But Vorak's hands shook as he stared at the endless ships. He knew if they left now, they might live. But the galaxy would never know this truth. And in his silence, the humans waited. The Starseeker trembled in the shadow of the human fleet. Weapons larger than cities aimed at them, silent but ready. The crew clung to their stations, knowing a single pulse would erase them forever. The human face still lingered on the screens, cold and endless, repeating the command. Turn back or join the forgotten. Rellen the historian could no longer sit still. He staggered toward the central console, his hands shaking, his eyes wide. "Captain, look at this," he whispered. The fragments of the silent war files still burned on his display. But as Rellen dug deeper, more pieces unlocked themselves, as if the humans allowed him to see. The images were terrifying, countless. Species once filled the stars, proud empires, vast fleets, glorious cultures, but all of them shared the same ending. They stood against humanity and then they were erased. Not only their fleets, not only their colonies, but their very memory. Vorak's jaw tightened. "Why?" he muttered. "Why would humans erase history itself?" Reland's voice broke. "Because memory is rebellion. If no one remembers who resisted, then no one dares resist again." The crew shivered. They understood the terrible genius of it. Wars did not need to be fought endlessly. If you erase the past, you erase the idea of resistance. The galaxy's silence was not ignorance, it was obedience. But then Reeland found something worse, a section locked away in the deepest layer. It showed not only the Thalcor but dozens of other species none of the crew had ever heard of, species erased so completely that even their names were stolen. One file caught his eye, a record of a vast coalition, hundreds of alien races united to stop Earth. Their fleets darkened entire skies, their armies outnumbered humanity 100-1, and yet, in a single day, their entire coalition vanished. No trace, no wreckage, no survivors, only silence. Reeland collapsed into his chair, his face pale as ash. He whispered, "This is why the maps end. This is why no one speaks of it. Humanity did not win wars. Humanity ended them before they began. They burned memory itself." The crew gasped in horror. One officer clutched his head. If this is true, then perhaps even our history is not real. Perhaps they erased parts of us too. Fear rippled through them like fire in dry grass. Every word felt dangerous. Every thought felt watched. Vorak gripped the rail, his voice low but steady. If this truth exists, then it must be known. The galaxy must see what humans have done. But the moment he said the words, the human face shifted. The calm indifference faded, replaced with something sharper. The voice filled the ship like thunder. "You would spread whispers that do not belong to you. You would break silence. Then you will learn what silence costs." The fleet around them stirred, their colossal hulls gliding into new formations. The drones swarmed tighter, hemming the Starseeker in on all sides. Every console flared with warnings. The ship's systems began to shut down. It was no longer a warning. It was a sentence. The crew panicked. Some cried out. Some prayed to gods long forgotten. But Reeland raised his trembling voice above them. "Captain, wait. Look here." He had discovered one last fragment, hidden under layers of locked code. It was not a battle record, not a war file. It was a message, written by a human hand. The words were simple, carved into the silence of eternity. "We do not erase because we fear. We erase because mercy cannot be trusted. They will rise again. They will destroy again. And so we give the galaxy only one law: obey or be forgotten." The crew fell silent. No one dared breathe. They realized humanity's truth was not only power, but philosophy, a cold logic, that only through silence could peace survive. It was not cruelty, it was order, but order enforced by erasure. Vorak's hands shook on the command rail. His heart thundered with the weight of choice. To turn back now meant living in silence. To go forward meant joining the forgotten. And behind him, his crew begged, "Captain, please choose life." But his eyes burned with fire. He whispered to himself, "No history worth living in is built on silence." And in that moment, the humans decided his fate. The silence inside the Starseeker was heavier than any sound. The crew clutched their seats, waiting for death. The human fleet surrounded them like a wall of black steel, unmoving yet alive. Every shadow pressed down on their minds, every moment dragged like a knife through their nerves. Then the lights dimmed. The crew wept, prayed, begged, but the ship moved like a prisoner in chains. The planet loomed larger, its surface scarred with battlefields older than recorded time. Mountains split by ancient fire, oceans boiled away, and on its broken plains stood monuments, towers of stone etched with symbols of races long forgotten. Vorak's breath caught in his throat. This is it. This is the graveyard of memory. As they descended lower, they saw the monuments more clearly. Each tower bore names, languages, and faces, but none of them known. Not a single one belonged to any species alive in the galaxy today. Civilizations erased not only from life, but from history itself. Reeland fell to his knees, tears streaming. They did not just kill them, they preserved the silence. They built a monument to what they erased, so only they would remember, while the rest of us lived blind. The crew realized the truth. Humanity had not simply hidden its power, it had shaped the galaxy like an author shaping a story, choosing which voices survived and which were forgotten. Then, as if the humans wanted to prove their final lesson, the planet itself awakened. The towers glowed with faint light, the names and faces shifting. The crew gasped as their own species appeared on the stones, their own languages carved into the monuments, their own histories etched beside the forgotten. One officer collapsed in despair. "They are warning us. We too can be erased." And for the first time, Captain Vorak's defiance faltered. His fire turned to ash in his chest, because he understood the power before him was not only to destroy flesh, but to destroy the idea of resistance, to make rebellion impossible by cutting it out of memory itself. The human voice spoke once more, colder than the void. "You came to learn why the maps end. Now you know, the border is not where the stars stop. It is where silence begins." The crew fell silent, broken by the revelation. They had not found the edge of the galaxy. They had found the edge of history. The Star Seeker hovered above the dead world, its crew broken by the visions, their minds scarred by the truth. The human fleet loomed around them like gods of judgment, their black hulls silent, their weapons asleep yet more terrifying than any fire, and the monuments below glowed with shifting names, carving warnings into eternity. Vorak stood at the command rail, his defiance burned down to embers. He had come for discovery, but what he found was destiny written by another's hand, a galaxy not free but shaped, bent, rewritten by human will. His crew whispered prayers, begging him to surrender, to leave, to forget. But he knew there would be no forgetting. The human voice returned, calm and final. "You know the cost of silence. You know the law, obedience or oblivion." Reland the historian raised his head, his eyes hollow but burning. "Captain, they are not only guardians, they are editors of existence. They will erase us if we refuse. They will erase us if we speak." His hands shook as he clutched the console. But if even one voice carries this truth back to the galaxy, then the silence is broken. Vorak looked at his crew. Most were already lost to despair, some muttered nonsense, others wept, but Reland's words struck him like fire in frozen blood. Perhaps they could not win, but they could warn. He ordered the comms officer to prepare a transmission. The officer hesitated, her face pale. "Captain, if we send this, they will erase us." Vorak's voice was steady. "They will erase us anyway. Better we die speaking than live forgotten." The message began to record. Vorak's voice carried across the stars. "To the Galactic Council, to every colony, to every race that still breathes, hear me. The maps end at human space for a worm. Eason, the borders are not ignorance, they are silence. Humanity has erased entire civilizations, erased memory itself. They do not fight wars. They erase history. If you value your lives, if you value your freedom, remember this. Do not trust the silence." The words were raw, broken, desperate, but they burned with truth. The crew held their breath as the signal launched, a single burst of data carrying their final warning beyond the human wall. The human fleet stirred, weapons unfolded, shadows stretched. The voice came once more, but now it thundered with judgment. "You were warned. You chose defiance. Now you will be forgotten." Light consumed the Star Seeker. Not fire, not explosion, but erasure. Panels dissolved. Metal turned to dust without heat. Crew members screamed as their voices faded mid-sound, faces blurred into nothing. Names vanished from memory even as they cried out. Reland clutched his chest, whispering, "At least, they will know." Before even his whisper was gone, in moments the ship was no more. Not wreckage, not debris, nothing. The human fleet closed its formation again. The monuments below dimmed. The silence returned, heavier than before. But far away, beyond human borders, a faint signal reached alien space. Broken, damaged, incomplete. A fragment of Vorak's voice survived, his final words carried through the void. "The maps end for a reason. Do not follow us." The council chambers would tremble when the fragment arrived. Some would dismiss it as myth, others as madness, but a seed of fear would grow, and in whispered halls, one truth would remain. No one dares ask why the maps end at human space, because now they know.